Hello everyone. I'm Sandhya Bharti, Head of Editorial IPN News at the Indian Startup Times. And today in our interview, we are joined by Mr. Parthasarathy N.S., who is a veteran entrepreneur, investor, and technology leader, best known for co-founding Mindtree and helping scale it into a $1 billion global IT services company. Mr. Parth, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure, Sandhya, to be here.
Mr. Parth, before we jump into the conversation, I'll take just a quick minute to introduce Indian
Mhm.
Startup Times. We have been building the platform for almost 3 years now, and it's been a very organic and incredible journey for us, like the kind of responses we have received. And over time, IST has grown into one of the trusted voice in India's startup ecosystem, with close to 6 million impressions every month across our website and social channels and a very engaged community of 39K plus founders, investors, and operators. And however, our focus has always been quality, deep insight led stories and thoughtful conversations with founders, venture capitalists, and industry leaders. And moreover, beyond content, we are now evolving into a more network driven platform, like one that actively connects startups with investors and enables meaningful conversations around capital, growth, and real world challenges. With that context, we are really glad to have you
Thank
here
you.
today, Mr. Parth.
Thank you.
Looking forward to a great
Thank you.
conversation.
I think the ecosystem needs a lot more players like you. So you guys are doing a wonderful job.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure, Mr. Parth. Mr. Parth, to begin with your journey, like you have had a remarkable journey from co-founding Mindtree and scaling it into a $1 billion enterprise to now mentoring and investing in startups through Mela Ventures. So, looking back, what experiences from your entrepreneurial journey have most shaped your approach as an investor today?
I think if you look at, first of all, I think we should acknowledge that, Mindtree was built in a different period where the world has changed a lot, not just in terms of technology, in terms of many other aspects as well. But having said that, some basic first principles apply, and that is common irrespective of what age and which era you build the companies on. If I look back, I think there are two or three things strikes me as very important in what I have learned, and I would want to pass it on to the next generation. One is that clearly ordinary people can get together and do extraordinary things. I think that's a fundamental belief we need to have, and we believe in that. That's point number one. Point number two is actually a cohesive team and a complementary team of a group of people, could be two, three, four, doesn't matter, is better than one individual genius. Because the startup journey is a very difficult journey. You go through ups and downs. We all know that very well. Always having a co-founder with complementary skills actually makes a big difference in terms of how they wade through the troubled times. That's the second. Third, and I think what we have learned in building Mindtree is I use it the word as focus. Focus, focus, focus. You can't be all things to all people. Be very focused in terms of what you're attempting to do. I think to summarize, I think these three are the most important lessons that I would carry forward into to the startup teams.
Yeah. So at Mindtree, culture and long term thinking played a major role in the company's success. So, do you believe today's startup founders are giving enough importance to building sustainable organizational cultures alongside rapid growth?
I think it's unfair to expect startup founders to focus on culture in the beginning, though we want them to, because I think that's what, like you rightly pointed out, helps in building sustainable organizations over long periods of time. In the initial days, I think it's rightly so. The founders focus on getting a product market fit, getting a few set of customers, and somehow wade through that initial 0 to 1 phase. We have been inculcating the importance of building an organization and a culture towards long-term sustainability with founders. And I think it's been a mixed journey for us till now. Slowly, people are realizing that after a particular size, it's important to have a good organization structure with roles and responsibilities and a very right culture suitable for the organization. There's nothing like one culture that will work for all organizations. You'll have to find a suitable culture which works for your organization. So we continue to work with founders. I think as after they cross a certain stage in terms of what size they are, I think people realize the importance of culture. Culture is also very misunderstood. People don't understand what culture means. So I think it takes a little bit of education in terms of working with the founders closely. And I think we keep sharing our past experiences, and that's how people learn.
And that's an interesting perspective, especially at a time when the startup ecosystem itself is
Mhm.
evolving rapidly. Right. So, from your vantage point as an investor and mentor, how do you assess the current state of India's startup ecosystem, and what key shifts have you observed in founder mindset and company building over the past few years?
First of all, I think we are in a remarkable position as a startup ecosystem. I think it is, I'll be honest, before we became an investor and we are running Mindtree, we had no idea of how the startup ecosystem was. We had a bits and pieces view, but we didn't have a holistic view. But having jumped into as a VC in 2020, we understood the startup ecosystem very well. And if you look at how we have analyzed the startup ecosystem, I see the startup ecosystem is in a very good phase of growth, number one, but it is still evolving. The way we see from an innovation and technology point of view, we see the startup ecosystem evolving in four stages. The first stage of the startup ecosystem is what I call as business model innovation. What I mean is actually there is an Uber which existed outside India. People identified an opportunity here. Can we replicate that here? I'm not undermining the importance of that. I am not undermining the challenges in doing that. India is a difficult market. It's not one market. It's a price sensitive market. So I think the first wave of startups which happened were what I call as business model innovations. Second wave of innovation startups happened when people suddenly realize, oh my God, we have so much of software talent in our country. We've been only providing services. Why not we build products out of India? And I think that gave rise to a whole lot of startups which did reasonably well in terms of building products for the world. The Freshworks and the Zohos and the capillary systems and many, many very good examples of companies which came up in that second wave of innovation. We are in the midst of the third wave of innovation, which I call it as engineering innovation. No, you can call it as deep tech, but I prefer to call it as engineering innovation because in India, a lot of people confuse engineering with software. Software is one part of engineering. Engineering is a much broader set. So I think when we talk about deep tech, we always talk about multiple technologies coming together to solve a problem, right? So we are in the midst of engineering based innovation, and that's why you see a lot of deep tech startups, a lot of focus on deep tech. We are in the very early stages, very, very early stages of green shoots that we are seeing in a science based innovation. There is a scientific discovery which happens in a educational institution or a science lab, and then people figure out a way to say, can I take this invention or innovation and monetize it through a startup? We believe the next generation, next couple of decades, you will see a mix of all these four kinds of companies. And that's the way we look at the startup ecosystem. So I think along with this, the founders are also evolved. People have realized that a complex problem to be solved, the easy problem has already been solved. The problems are more and more complex. So you go from business model to pure software to engineering to a science. I think that's the way the startup ecosystem will evolve.
Yeah, that's very well explained, Mr. Pal. So, talking about Mela Ventures has invested across sectors including enterprise tech, deep tech, AI, and climate tech. So, with portfolio companies such as Galaxy Eye, Mindcrew, Foonet, and Indra Water, when evaluating startups across such diverse categories, what are the common qualities or business fundamentals that consistently stand out to you?
So obviously, I think the standard way of looking at startups apply to us as well. We are no different. We look at whether the problem that they're solving is a big problem. Is it not just a big problem? Is it an urgent problem to be solved? Many times, what happens is startups come up with an idea to solve a very important problem, but if there's no urgency to buy from the enterprise or the customer side, then I think even if you have a great solution, there's no buyer. So we look at both the size of the problem that they're solving, the complexity of the problem they're solving, and the urgency to buy that solution, the urgency to solve that problem. That's obviously we look at that. Second is we look at how big the market is, and we are not particularly concerned about one geography or the other. As long as the market is big enough, we are happy with that. Last but not the least, I think we look at the founders and the founding team. We look at beyond the founders. Is there a good founding team? May not be founders, but the next level of leadership. Because, like I said before, startup journey is a tough journey. So you need to have a resilience built into the DNA of the founders and the founding team. And that is what will help them. To expect it's a bed of roses and everything will be hunky dory, I think is unrealistic. They will go through ups and downs. The question is, how do you come back from the downs that you have? How do you learn from the mistakes that you made? And that's how you move forward. That's what we look for founders. A lot of time with founders, sometimes with no agenda, just to see what is the mindset of the founder. What is the mindset of the founder? How does he or she think they will solve problems in the future? They may not be able to foresee all the problems today, but if a problem happens or a crisis happens, how will they evolve? How will they grow? How will they solve? That's what we look for.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Parth. So, since you have closely witnessed the evolution of enterprise technology over several decades, so today with AI, automation, and data infrastructure transforming industries globally, where do you see the biggest untapped opportunities emerging for Indian startups?
So I think the startup opportunities for Indian entrepreneurs is very widespread. And I think it need not be linked only to AI. There are still large enterprise problems which has not been solved. Yes, AI can help them to solve them better. That's one kind of opportunity. The second kind of opportunities is how can we use AI and completely reimagine how problems can be solved. I think the big difference with AI compared to other technologies in the past is that if you take a incremental approach of using AI to solve the problem, that doesn't help. I call it as a dimmer switch. It's like a fan regulator. You slowly increase the dimmer from very low brightness to high brightness. I think a dimmer switch kind of approach for using AI is probably not the best way to do it. You have to have a very drastic shift in terms of reimagining how a problem needs to be solved with newer technologies, which happens to be AI today. And that is where the opportunity is. Everybody, if they start thinking incrementally moving forward, that may not be the larger opportunity. The larger opportunity will be to completely rethink backwards from where the technology is today to how to solve the problem.
So, several Mela Ventures portfolio companies are also building AI led enterprise
Mhm.
solutions. So, how do you see AI reshaping the next generation of B2B startups and enterprise innovation in
Yeah,
India?
I see the AI adoption in startups as twofold. I call it as AI inside and AI outside. You have to use AI inside to run the startup itself. It could be as simple as coding and testing and so many other things that you do internally. That I call it as AI inside. And AI outside is actually how do you use AI in your product so that your customers benefit out of that. And these two can take very different shapes. But I think it's important to do both. You can't be doing only one because if you do only one, somebody who does both will be far more efficient than you are. So both AI inside and AI outside is the way entrepreneurs should look at the problem.
That's great, Mr. Parth. Building on that, venture capital activity has become far more selective in recent years. So, against this backdrop, what investment trends do you believe will define the next 3 to 5 years in India's startup ecosystem, and which sectors are investors most optimistic about
See,
today?
today you can read any newspaper today. The flavor of the season seems to be deep tech. We've been investing in deep tech 5 years back. So, but I think that's okay. But I think what is more important for us is what kind of problems that young entrepreneurs are looking to solve, and that's where I think the money will go. But for the startup ecosystems to evolve very well across different technologies and different science-based innovation, you need investors at every stage. Today, for example, there's a lot of focus on early stage. Early stage, there are many VCs who are focused on early stage. Our concern is actually, let's say, when early stage needs to go to the growth stage, are there enough growth stage investors in deep tech? In fact, I think that's going to evolve. It's still evolving, but over time, once that evolves, then just as the way in the B2C space, that's evolved very well. The same thing needs to evolve for deep tech as well. But it needs a much deeper understanding because deep tech problems are very complex problems to solve. It takes a lot of time to understand. If somebody says, I'm sending a satellite and having multiple payloads like what Galaxy is doing, you need to spend a lot of time to understand what it is. You need to have a reasonable understanding of the technology yourself to be able to appreciate what they're doing. Otherwise, you'll think, one satellite company is same as another satellite company.
So, does Mela Venture see strong opportunities within fintech or media tech?
We don't specifically look at verticals within the enterprise tech. Our two big buckets are enterprise tech and deep tech. And within deep tech, we focus a little more on climate tech as well. So that's the way we look at it. So within enterprise tech, we are completely sector agnostic. It could be in media tech, it could be in fintech, it could be in fundamental infrastructure. For example, you talked about WooNet. WooNet is an infrastructure company for fintech. Is it a fintech solution itself? The answer is no, but who are their customers? All their customers are banks, or their customers are well, financial institutions. So we are sector agnostic within enterprise tech, but we look at both solution for that vertical as well as the fundamental infrastructure underlying, which is required for the future growth.
Okay. So beyond funding, startup founders today are navigating challenges around scaling, talent, governance, and global competition. So from your interactions with entrepreneurs, what are the biggest gaps founders need to address while building enduring businesses?
I think there are a couple of areas. I won't say gaps, but I think I want startup founders to focus on a little more. A couple of things. One, I think most of the founders in India are technical people. And technical people always underestimate the importance of sales and marketing. I think we have to invest more. We have to spend more time on sales and marketing. You can have the greatest product in the world, but nobody's going to queue up in front of your house to buy the product unless you go and market yourself. And I think sales and marketing exists for that reason. So I think one point is actually, I think founders should start focusing from early stage on the importance of sales and marketing and build the right kind of talent for that. That's point number one. Point number two is actually, I think, is on governance. Maybe we came from a listed entity as Mindtree, so our standards of governance that we look for are at very, very, very different levels. Whereas we were completely taken aback by the way in which governance was treated within startups. I think it's changing now. More and more people are understanding the importance of governance. I think governance is important, and we look at governance as in a very simple way. We tell to founders, it is like plumbing in when you build a house. As you build the house, you have to put the plumbing in place. You can't say I'll build the house, बाद में plumbing करेंगे. It doesn't work. So because a lot of founders think I'm still too small. Why do I need governance? Right? I think that is what the education is required. And I think as a VC ecosystem, all VCs have to come together to drive home the importance of governance in startups. These are the two primary. If I have to pick two, I'll pick these two. There are many other areas, including organization building and culture we talked about. But I think the two most important one will be sales and marketing and governance.
That's fascinating, Mr. Parth. And how does Mela Ventures work with portfolio companies beyond capital to help founders navigate these challenges effectively?
So it's a tough job. We are very selective in terms of the kind of companies we partner with or we invest in because we are operators. We have run companies in the past. We have built companies. We understand technology to a certain level. So we like to get involved, but at the same time, we are not running the company. There's a fine line between running a company and staying outside and helping the company to run. So I think one of the two or three things we drive, even before we invest, we said we are not the kind of financial investors who will write a check and see you every quarter. That's not who we are. If that is what you're looking for, we are not the right partners for that. There are many other people, good people, you can partner with them. We are active investors, which means every month I want to get involved. We want to come and see how things are going, not necessarily with the idea of supervision. That is not our intention. Our intention is very clear. Whenever a founder or a founding startup has a problem, I want to be the first port of call. If they have a problem, they should pick up the call and speak to me. What happens is till the time you invest, we sit on the opposite end of the table. We are sitting there because I'm negotiating valuation and they're negotiating valuation. But after we invest, we are on the same side of the table. Right? I can't succeed if they can't succeed. Now, how do you drive that mindset in people? When they say they have a problem and they call me, I am not giving an expectation that I know all the solutions. I know, I may not know, I will not know definitely. But at least I will know somebody else who can help you, if not me. I mean, that the network that we have built over 4 decades will come to our help. So I think we keep telling founders that if you have a problem, if you have a crisis, call us first. That's one mindset change we want. Second is actually we get very deeply involved every month in terms of reviewing their finances, reviewing their business, the progress that they made. Founders have multiple challenges at any point of time. They're grappling with hundreds of problems. We help them to organize it in buckets, prioritize them, focus on these. This is important right now. This can be parked for later. That guidance is what we bring to them. And that will help them to be able to make progress faster in the right areas. That is what we do. Of course, we do the quarterly board meetings and the regulatory stuff that is required to be done. But our involvement is this. The third is once they reach a certain size, we help them to think about saying, how do you want to build the organization of tomorrow? Today, you're $1 million business. Tomorrow, in 2, 3 years, you'll be a $10 million. What kind of organization structure is required for a 10 million company? You think now. Form your organization chart. You know, directionally, I'm going there. I may not fill all the positions today, but you know this is the organization that you're building. And that will help you to attract the right kind of talent because 0 to 1 requires one kind of talent. 1 to 10 requires a very different kind of talent, right? So how do you make them think in that direction is what we do. Those are the areas we get involved. Once they identify, let's say I want to get a sales leader. We are happy to get involved in interviewing the person. We are not going to make the decision. We'll give our feedback. So you give me three resumes, I will talk to all three of them, I'll give feedback on all three of them. You apply judgment, you have spoken to the person, and then you decide. So I think we are happy being a sounding board for multiple areas with multiple challenges that the founders face on an ongoing basis.
So finally, to wrap up, after more than 4 decades as technology leader, entrepreneur, investor, and mentor, what advice would you give to aspiring founders who want to build meaningful and sustainable companies in today's highly competitive startup environment?
Two things. I'll expand the question to a little beyond startups. I'm saying young, I will start with young graduates coming out of engineering colleges or business schools. First of all, I think everybody need not become an entrepreneur. Somehow we are getting into the mindset saying everybody should be an entrepreneur. Everybody need not become an entrepreneur. Everybody probably is not cut out to be an entrepreneur. That's point number one. Point number two is actually if entrepreneurial journey is what your calling is, then focus on what problem that you want to solve. What is going to give you the biggest joy? That's the second. Third, how do you use your technology or business background to be able to solve the problem? Fourth, I would strongly recommend find a co-founder. Doing it alone is very, very hard. So we strongly recommend people say find somebody like-minded. Need not be your college mate or a hostel mate. Can be somebody else who you met in a networking event, but things alike. Identify somebody who can solve the problem. And last but not the least, focus. But most important, I think in India, I keep saying this in educational institutions. This entrepreneurial journey is over romanticized as though it is, bed of roses and, you'll become a unicorn after 2 years. It's a very tough road. So I think prepare yourself to go through a rough journey for the next 10 years. If you're not willing to commit yourself for the next 10 years to go through ups and downs, either because your mindset is or your family needs a more stable environment, your startup is not your calling. You can look at a startup at a later point of time because you have to present the reality to startups. We only see the successes, we don't see the failures, we don't see the hard work, we don't see the burnouts which happen behind. So I think I want young founders to look at it holistically and not necessarily worry about the trend saying everybody is becoming an entrepreneur. I also should become an entrepreneur. That need not be the only path. That's my advice to young people coming out of colleges today.
Thank you, Mr. Path, for sharing your valuable insights on entrepreneurship and enterprise technology and India's evolving startup ecosystem. Your journey made the conversation truly insightful.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate Sandhya having you for having me in this.
It's a pleasure, Mr.
Thank you.
Path.